Perfect.
Awesome. I'm going to
Hi,
spell
everyone.
it.
It's nice to meet you. I'm Mairin. So I'm going to be presenting on my analysis of different potential ranking systems for adoption by USA Climbing. I'm zooming in from California, and I was mentored by Joseph Sable. I'm choosing this topic because I've been a competitive climber for the last 4 years. And during that time, I've been able to kind of recognize the advantages and disadvantages of USA Climbing's current ranking systems. And I've recognized that they require a complete overhaul of their current ranking system because it doesn't account for the number of competitors who are present at any given competition, despite it being quite a widely variable. So what even is USA Climbing? Well, USA Climbing is the nationwide governing body of competitive rock climbing in the United States. They're in charge of both defining the national team to send to nationwide and worldwide competitions, but also for doing lower level, more introductory level climbing competitions. For example, regional and qualifying event competitions, which is what we're going to be focusing on today. So qualifying events are local level competitions that focus on a smaller number of competitors. And then based on your qualifying event scores, of which you attend multiple, you get ranked for regionals. The top 26 competitors who are ranked through the qualifying events move on to regionals. And this is what we're going to be talking about today. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about the data collection process. In order to ensure that my programs and my ranking systems were actually performing better than USAC's, I had to look through a lot of data of the last 3 years. So I scraped data off of USAC Data Project and used that data from the last 3 years because that contained the relevant information to make sure that my programs were actually predicting better the USAC climbing regional system. So if you remember the last slide, we're talking about regional championships. We're using regional championship scores to ensure that the ranking systems are actually predicting well. There were a total of 10 categories and 54 regional championships we looked at, which means there's a total of 540 different rankings that I get to look at. And that's thousands of different competitors over the last 3 years. Also, we're looking at 2 different categories quite separately. So bouldering, which is short walls, and if you fall, it doesn't really matter because it's short enough that you won't get injured, versus lead, which is really tall walls, so tall that you need a rope to stay safe. A lot of climbers have different specialties and have different abilities in each competition, so it would be impossible to look at them at the same time because competitors aren't going to be performing the same over both disciplines. I'm just going to give you a quick overview of the different models we're going to be talking about before we get into them, and also talk a little bit about some of the ones I won't be talking about much. So the current ranking system is the one that's used by USA Climbing, and it accounts for the top 2 competitions each competitor attends, and also doesn't account for the number of competitors present at a given competition. This is an issue because sometimes you'll see a competition with 5 competitors, and sometimes you'll see one with 30. And it treats coming in first place out of 5 the same as it treats coming in first place out of 30. And so to address this, all of the other things that you see, the 5 other proposed ranking systems, take into account the number of competitors present. The best ranking system, and I define best as the one that has the lowest mean squared error from the predicted, what it predicts, and then how it actually turns out in a regional championship event. So the one with the lowest mean squared error, so the one that performed the best, was the percentile ranking system for all competitions that a competitor attended in a given year. However, this one isn't recommended because in order to use this, it would mean deviating from USAC's standard top 2 competitions a competitor attends, which may encourage competitors to stop competing after they've achieved a couple really good scores in order to avoid lowering their average score. So this could, first of all, change the strategy of when to attend competitions, and second of all, possibly decrease in predictability as competitors adjusted their strategies. For this reason, I've chosen to recommend the fraction and logistic ranking systems, both of which have higher predictive ability than the current ranking system at 99.9% certainty. And also have both different advantageous aspects that would get rid of a lot of issues with the current system. I'm going to go a bit more in depth on the current model now, so that you have a better understanding of what is different between all the systems. So the current model, as you can see in the graph, only has one curve. All the other models I'm going to talk about are going to have multiple curves. Each curve represents the number of competitors. So in this one, the number of competitors isn't even a variable. Coming in first out of 50 is the same as coming in first out of 1. It's 1,000 points no matter what. Whereas in the logistic model, which is the best ranking model based on predictive accuracy out of the recommended models, you can see that there's a lot of different lines. Each line represents a different number of competitors. And the higher that the line is, the higher each point on the line is, that means you're receiving more points for that placement. So coming in 10th in a competition with 15 competitors is worse than coming in 10th in a competition with 20 competitors. Now, the issue with this system is it's a little bit hard to calculate if you're just the casual average climber, and that makes it a little bit difficult to implement. However, that's why the fraction model is also recommended. The fraction model is incredibly easy to calculate. It is your current score, your rank in a competition, divided by the number of competitors present. So if you got 4th out of 5 competitors, that's 0.8. And you want the lowest score possible. And a thing that's worth noting here is that coming in first out of 1 is treated like last place, which isn't necessarily not true, and also likely won't have a big impact on your score, because any region with just 1 competitor at a comp is likely not to have the 26 competitors to get people possibly not qualifying for regionals. So in conclusion, I'm recommending 2 different ranking systems to USA Climbing: the fraction model because of its easy score calculation, and the logistic model because of its really high predictive power. Implementing either of these different models would have a really big impact on the strategic strategies of a lot of competitors in USA Climbing as well. This is really important because in past models, having a really small competitor field was really advantageous to competitors. So oftentimes you would seek out a competition with just 5 competitors because that would guarantee you a top 5. With these new models, that isn't necessarily as good of a thing, so you aren't going to be seeking out smaller competitions. This means that the smaller competitions, which usually are in hard to access areas like another state, for example, oftentimes there's less competitors in, say, Arizona compared to California. It means that people will want to go to Arizona for competitions. This can pose a big issue because a lot of people don't have the resources to be able to either drive or fly to Arizona from a different state, rent a hotel, and then attend a competition. By changing this, we've made the ranking system a lot more equitable for a lot of different climbers from different economic backgrounds so that everyone can have a chance of qualifying for regionals. In the future, I'm going to take this system to USAC and present my findings in hopes that they might possibly consider changing their system to adopt a lot of these different ranking systems and improve their accuracy and also make the ranking systems more equitable. All right, thanks for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Awesome. Thanks, Mairin. That was super interesting. I feel like we're spanning many different sports today. So first question for you is, you mentioned at the end that you would want to go and actually pitch this idea. Do you think there would be any resistance? And if so, what do you think that would be for?
So I've thought about this quite a bit, and USAC has a really strong history of changing their ranking systems, their score calculations. Someone actually presented an issue with their scoring calculation about 3 years ago at this point, and the next year they did change their scoring. This is within a competition. I'm talking about ranking. So someone presented something within a competition and was like, hey, you could be a lot more predictive if you did this. And they did make that change. And in the past, like just this year, they made some massive changes to their system. So they're definitely not shying away from changing their system and updating it, which is also something that's supported by their mission statement and a lot of what they stand for throughout their outreach. So I believe that while it may be a little bit difficult for them to change their ranking system, I don't think it is something that they're going to shy away from.
Gotcha. And have you tried doing this already, or is this a future plan?
This is something I'm planning on doing within the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
I have almost set up my plan. I just need to finalize the appointment time.
Gotcha. And is there anything, I mean, it sounds like you're pretty thorough and have two, separate ideas to pitch them. Is there anything that you would add in addition to these that if you had more time?
You see, if I had more time, I would likely look into regression models. But at the same time, it would be really difficult to update that constantly. And also, the seasons are so short, I don't believe it would lend itself as well. So, really, it would just be coming up with a greater wealth of different possibilities. However, these two are really strong contenders. And while I might spend more time making more models, I think that the two I'm presenting are really strong in what they do.
Yeah, and I think sometimes simpler is better when it comes to something like this, and people will be able to understand where their score comes from versus it being like more of a black box.
Mhm.
Very cool. And is there anything that you would continue to do research on in this area in the future?
Well, I would love to look into within a competition if the scoring could be improved and possibly predicting outcomes instead of just. I would like to start predicting outcomes as a goal instead of like using the scoring to make a better scoring system. There's a different type of necessity from a prediction system. I could actually use a linear model or regression models. I could use machine learning for that kind of thing, whereas it wouldn't lend itself as well to scoring. So I think that would be a really interesting project.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was very interesting, and it sounds like a lot of other people on this call have similar types of projects, and hopefully, you guys all enjoyed each other's presentations.